divorced me. He walked out of the courthouse believing he'd won everything. His company was worth billions. The media called him America's golden CEO. And standing beside him was the woman he thought was his future. But there was one secret I carried away that day. A secret that would change all of our lives forever. Just hours before signing those divorce papers, I discovered I wasn't walking away alone. I was pregnant. With twins. I never told him. Not because I wanted revenge, but because the man I loved had already stopped believing me. 5 years later, fate brought us face to face again, the moment he looked into the eyes of my children. His entire world fell apart. And that's when he realized the most expensive mistake of his life wasn't losing his wife. It was losing 5 years with the family he never knew he had. The courtroom doors swung open just as Emily Carter's knees buckled. She clutched the white envelope in one trembling hand and a folded medical report in the other. Across the marble hallway, cameras flashed around Ethan Blackwood, the billionaire CEO whose face appeared on business magazines almost every month. He wasn't looking at her. He was smiling beside another woman. Emily stared at the divorce papers. Then she looked down at the ultrasound tucked inside her purse. 2 tiny heartbeats. Twins. She whispered to herself, barely loud enough to hear, "You'll never know what you walked away from." She turned and disappeared into the pouring rain. What Ethan didn't know that day would become the biggest regret of his life. 3 years earlier, Emily never imagined she'd marry one of America's youngest billionaires. She met Ethan Blackwood at a charity fundraiser in Chicago. She wasn't impressed by his wealth. She laughed when everyone else tried to impress him. That was exactly why Ethan noticed her. "You didn't even ask what company I own," he joked. Emily smiled. "Because I'd rather know what kind of person owns it." For the first time in weeks, Ethan laughed without forcing it. They spent the rest of the evening talking about books, family, and childhood dreams instead of money. Emily worked as a pediatric nurse. Long shifts, little sleep, a modest apartment. She loved helping children more than chasing a bigger paycheck. Ethan admired that. 6 months later, they were engaged. The wedding wasn't extravagant, despite Ethan's fortune. Emily insisted on something intimate. "I want memories," she said. "Not headlines." Ethan kissed her forehead. "Then memories it is." For nearly 2 years, life felt almost perfect. They cooked breakfast together on Sundays, watched old movies under blankets, took late-night walks whenever Ethan escaped the endless pressure of board meetings. Emily became the calm in his chaotic world. Whenever investors questioned him, whenever newspapers attacked his decisions, whenever competitors tried to destroy his company, Emily reminded him who he really was. "You don't have to prove your worth every day." "I know," he'd reply, "but I still try." She would smile, then come home, and he always did. Until he didn't. Victoria Lang entered Blackwood Global as the company's new communications director. She was intelligent, confident, beautiful, and dangerously ambitious. She understood exactly how billionaires thought. Success first, everything else later. She quickly became Ethan's closest advisor. Late meetings, business trips, weekend strategy sessions. Emily didn't worry at first. She trusted her husband completely. One evening, she waited with dinner growing cold on the table. Midnight arrived. Still no Ethan. Her phone finally buzzed. "Sorry, emergency meeting." Emily sighed. She reheated the food. Agon. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The distance between them became impossible to ignore. One night, Ethan walked through the front door exhausted. Emily wrapped her arms around him. "You've barely been home. I know. You missed my birthday. I'm sorry. You said that last month too." He rubbed his temples. "The company needs me." Emily quietly answered, "I need you too." He didn't respond. Emily never checked Ethan's phone. She never followed him. She never questioned every late meeting. Until one afternoon, she visited Ethan's office, hoping to surprise him with lunch. His assistant looked confused. I thought you knew. Knew what? Mr. Blackwood left for New York this morning. Emily frowned. He told me he was in Boston. The assistant immediately realized she'd said too much. I'm sorry. Emily smiled politely. It's okay. But it wasn't. That evening, Ethan came home carrying expensive flowers. Emily looked at him carefully. How was Boston? He hesitated. Busy. She already knew. You mean New York? Silence, only silence. Then, it wasn't important. Emily's heart cracked. You lied. I didn't want another argument. You created one. He walked away instead of explaining. That hurt more than the lie itself. Over the next several months, Ethan became someone Emily barely recognized. Business magazines praised his growing empire. Television called him America's next financial legend. At home, he barely spoke. Emily tried everything: weekend trips, marriage counseling, date nights. Letters, nothing worked. One evening, she placed an old photo album on the coffee table. Remember this? Ethan looked up. Our honeymoon. You smiled every day. I still smile. No. She gently closed the album. You smile for everyone except me. He stared out the window. I don't know how to fix this. Emily whispered, neither do I. Victoria knew exactly when to make her move. She waited until Ethan was exhausted after months of corporate battles. One evening, she entered his office carrying a folder. I wasn't going to tell you this. Ethan looked up. What is it? She slid photographs across the desk. Emily having coffee with another man, lying, smiling, walking together. Ethan frowned. Who's he? Victoria answered quietly, I hired someone because I was worried about how the press could use this. The investigator believes they're having an affair. Ethan's face hardened. He didn't know the man in the photos was actually Emily's cousin, Daniel, who had recently moved back to the city after years overseas. Victoria knew the truth. She simply chose not to tell him. Ethan shoved the photos into a drawer. For the first time in their marriage, he doubted Emily. That doubt would soon cost him everything. Emily knew something had changed before Ethan said a single word. He walked into the house just after 9, loosened his tie, and set his briefcase by the door without looking at her. The silence was heavier than any argument they'd ever had. I made your favorite, she said, pointing toward the dining table. He glanced at the untouched meal. I'm not hungry. You've said that 3 nights in a row. He finally met her eyes. Who is Daniel? Emily blinked. My cousin. Ethan's expression didn't soften. I've seen the pictures. What pictures? He pulled several photographs from his briefcase and scattered them across the table. Emily looked down. She and Daniel were laughing outside a cafe. Daniel was helping her carry grocery bags. They were hugging goodbye. Emily let out a short, stunned laugh. You're serious? Answer me. I already did. You've been meeting him for months because he's family. You never mentioned him. You never asked. Ethan folded his arms. The investigator says, The investigator? Her voice cracked. You hired someone to follow me? No. So who did? Ethan hesitated just long enough. Emily understood. Victoria. He didn't answer. Emily stepped backward. You believed another woman before believing your own wife. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. She picked up one photograph and held it in front of him. If you had looked 5 minutes longer, you would have seen Daniel kiss his wife goodbye before meeting me. Ethan looked uncertain for the first time. Emily noticed. So, you didn't even verify it. His silence said everything. The next morning, Ethan tried to apologize. I'm under a lot of pressure. Emily closed her bedroom suitcase. So am I. I made a mistake. You didn't make one mistake. She zipped the suitcase shut. You made 100 little choices that led here. I never cheated. I know. You know? I never believed you did. Then why are we here? Emily looked at him with tears in her eyes. Because you stopped choosing us. Those words followed Ethan all day. At work, Victoria watched him through the glass walls of his office. Everything okay? She asked. My marriage is falling apart. I'm sorry. She placed a comforting hand on his arm. Sometimes people grow apart. He stared through the window. Maybe. Victoria smiled to herself after leaving his office. Everything was unfolding exactly as she'd planned. Victoria wasn't interested in Ethan because she loved him. She loved power. Years earlier, she'd watched wealthy executives treat people like disposable assets. She promised herself she'd never be powerless again. Becoming Mrs. Blackwood wasn't about romance. It was about control. She quietly manipulated meetings, filed messages, canceled dinners Emily had planned by convincing Ethan another emergency meeting couldn't wait. She even intercepted flowers Ethan had ordered for their anniversary. Emily never knew he'd bought them. Ethan never knew they were never delivered. One small lie after another. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just enough to create distance. By the time either of them realized something was wrong. Months had already disappeared. Emily refused to give up without trying one final time. She invited Ethan to the small lakeside cafe where they'd had their first date. He arrived 20 minutes late. I'm sorry. You always are. They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Emily reached across the table. I don't want expensive vacations. I don't want another mansion. I don't care about headlines. I just want my husband back. Ethan looked exhausted. I don't know who that man is anymore. Find him. I don't know how. She nodded slowly. Then maybe that's our answer. He felt panic for the first time. Emily, she stood. I've been fighting for this marriage by myself. She kissed his cheek one last time. I can't keep doing it alone. As she walked away, Ethan almost called after her. Almost. Instead, he let her leave. It was the biggest mistake of his life. 3 weeks later, Emily received a courier envelope. Inside were divorce documents. No handwritten note, no explanation, just signatures waiting for hers. She stared at them for nearly an hour before calling Ethan. Is this really how it ends? His voice sounded distant. I think it's for the best. For who? Silence. I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. Emily laughed bitterly. I never married your money. I know. Then why does it feel like you're paying me to disappear? He had no answer. Neither realized Victoria was sitting quietly across from Ethan's desk, listening to every word. When the call ended, she smiled. One final obstacle was almost gone. A week before the divorce hearing, Emily visited her doctor. She'd been exhausted, dizzy, unable to keep food down. She expected stress, maybe anemia. Instead, the doctor smiled. Congratulations. Emily frowned. Congratulations? You're pregnant. Her heart skipped, then the doctor continued. And there's something else. He turned the ultrasound screen toward her. 2 tiny flickering heartbeats. Emily covered her mouth. Twins? The doctor nodded. Healthy twins. Tears streamed down her face. She had walked into the clinic believing her life was ending. Instead, 2 tiny lives had just given her a reason to keep going. She drove toward Ethan's office. He deserved to know. At the first red light, she reached for her phone. Then she remembered the divorce papers, the accusations, the investigator, the doubt, the woman who seemed to be beside him every waking hour. She slowly put the phone back down. If he wanted to be my family, she whispered, he would have fought for us. She turned the car around. Ethan Blackwood would sign the divorce papers without ever knowing he was about to become the father of twins. And fate wasn't finished with either of them. The divorce hearing lasted less than 20 minutes. No dramatic shouting, no public accusations, just 2 signatures that officially ended what had once been a beautiful marriage. Emily wore a simple navy dress. Ethan arrived in a tailored charcoal suit. For a brief moment, their eyes met. He wanted to say something, anything. Instead, the judge finalized the divorce. As they walked out of the courthouse, reporters surrounded Ethan. Mr. Blackwood, is it true you're dating Victoria Lang? Will there be another wedding? Emily froze. She slowly turned. Victoria stepped out of a black SUV and slipped her hand into Ethan's arm. The cameras exploded with flashes. Emily felt her heart sink. "So that's why," she whispered. Without another word, she walked away. She never looked back. Emily sold the house she'd bought before meeting Ethan. She moved to a quiet coastal town nearly 300 miles away. No luxury, no headlines, no reminders. She returned to nursing, taking part-time shifts until her pregnancy made long hours impossible. Money became tight. She sold jewelry, canceled subscriptions, skipped unnecessary expenses. Some nights she sat at the tiny kitchen table calculating bills with tears in her eyes. Then she'd hear two tiny kicks. Her hand rested on her growing belly. "You two are worth every sacrifice." Months later, she gave birth to healthy twins, a little boy, a little girl. She named them Noah and Lily. The first time she held them, she made herself a promise. They will grow up, surrounded by love. They will never feel abandoned. She kept Ethan's last name off their birth certificates, not out of revenge, out of protection. Meanwhile, Ethan's life looked flawless from the outside. Blackwood Global doubled in value. He appeared on magazine covers. He spoke at international conferences. He bought a penthouse overlooking Manhattan. People called him the man who had everything. But every night he came home to silence. Victoria had moved into his life with surprising speed. She redesigned his home, managed his schedule, even chose which friends he spent time with. At first, Ethan appreciated her efficiency. Eventually, it felt like control. "You've changed," his older brother Michael told him one evening. "I'm just busy." "No." Michael shook his head. "You used to smile. You used to laugh. You used to disappear for weekends because Emily wanted to see autumn leaves. When was the last time you did something that wasn't on your calendar?" Ethan couldn't answer. Several months later, Blackwood Global hired a new internal auditor after irregular financial reports appeared. Her name was Rachel Simmons. Brilliant, meticulous, fearless. Within weeks, she discovered something disturbing. Expense accounts had been manipulated. Private investigators had been hired without authorization. Shaman Mayams had disappeared from company servers. Every trail pointed toward one person, Victoria. Rachel placed a thick folder on Ethan's desk. "I think someone has been using company resources for personal reasons." Ethan opened the file, his heartbeat slowed, then accelerated. Invoices, deleted emails, surveillance payments, hotel bookings, private phone records. One receipt caught his attention. Private investigator, Daniel Carter surveillance. Daniel Carter, Emily's cousin. The investigator's complete report was attached. Page 7 read, "Subject appears to be meeting close family member. No evidence of romantic relationship." Ethan read the sentence again and again. His hands began to shake. He turned the page. The next page contained Victoria's handwritten note. "Only show the photos. Destroy the report." The room spun. Everything Emily had said had been true. Ethan drove to Emily's old apartment that same night. Someone else lived there. He contacted mutual friends. No one knew where she'd gone. He called her old hospital. She had resigned years ago. He searched social media. Nothing. It was as if she'd vanished. Back in his office, Ethan found an old photo of their honeymoon tucked inside a desk drawer. He remembered her words. "You stopped choosing us. For the first time since the divorce," he cried. Not because he'd lost his wife, because he'd finally understood why. Victoria denied everything. "It wasn't manipulation. I was protecting you." Ethan slammed the investigator's report onto the table. "You destroyed my marriage. You let me believe my wife betrayed me." Victoria remained calm. "You would have left her eventually." "Don't. You chose your company over her. You made those decisions." Her words stung because they contained some truth. He had been manipulated. But he had also ignored Emily's pain. He couldn't blame everything on Victoria. The board launched an internal investigation. Victoria was terminated for fraud, misuse of company funds, and destruction of fake records. Criminal charges followed. Her reputation collapsed. No headlines called her brilliant anymore, only disgraced. That was karma, not revenge. Consequences. 5 years passed. Emily built a peaceful life. She became head nurse at a children's clinic. Noah loved astronomy. Lily adored painting. They were kind, curious, and endlessly energetic. Emily never spoke badly about Ethan. Whenever the twins asked about their father, she'd simply say, "He made mistakes." But mistakes don't define an entire person. One autumn afternoon, the clinic organized a charity fundraiser. The event's largest donor? Blackwood Foundation. Emily almost declined to attend. Instead, she took a deep breath. Life had taught her that running from the past only gave it more power. She walked in holding Noah's and Lily's hands across the ballroom. Ethan looked up. Time seemed to stop. His eyes fell on the twins, then on Emily, then back to the children. The little boy had Ethan's smile. The little girl had his eyes. Something inside him whispered the truth before anyone said a word. He approached slowly. Emily's expression remained calm. "Hello, Ethan." He struggled to speak. Emily, his eyes filled with tears. "There," she nodded gently. "Yes, our children." Ethan's knees nearly gave out. 5 birthdays, 5 Christmas mornings, 5 years of bedtime stories, 5 years. "Gone," he whispered. "I never knew," Emily answered quietly. "I know." The charity gala continued around them, but for Ethan, the room had disappeared. His eyes remained fixed on the 2 children standing beside Emily. The little boy tilted his head. "Mom, who is he?" Emily knelt beside Noah and Lily. Her voice was calm. "This is someone who was once very important in my life." Ethan swallowed hard. Emily looked at him. They deserved the truth. She turned back to the twins. "This is your father." The children stared at Ethan. Noah stepped closer. "Really?" Ethan's voice trembled. "Yes." Noah smiled politely. "Hi." That single word shattered Ethan's heart. Not because it was cold, because it sounded like he was meeting a stranger. And he was. Over the next several weeks, Ethan asked Emily for one thing. A chance. Not to rebuild their marriage. Not to erase the past. Just a chance to know his children. Emily didn't answer immediately. Trust wasn't rebuilt with promises. It was rebuilt with actions. So Ethan waited. He attended school events without expecting attention. He sat quietly in the audience during Noah's science fair. He applauded Lily's piano recital from the last row. He never forced a conversation. He simply showed up. Week after week, month after month. One Saturday, Noah ran over after his soccer game. "Dad, did you see my goal?" Ethan smiled through watery eyes. "I wouldn't have missed it for anything." Emily watched from the sidelines. For the first time in years, she saw not the billionaire CEO, but the man she had fallen in love with. A man who had finally learned what truly mattered. One evening, after dropping the twins home, Ethan stayed on the porch. "I owe you something," he said. Emily folded her arms. "You don't owe me words. I know. But I need to say them." He took a deep breath. "I blamed other people for a long time. Victoria manipulated me. The pressure changed me. The company consumed me." He looked down. "But none of that forced me to stop listening to my wife." Emily remained silent. "I failed you," he continued. "I wasn't there when you needed me most. I doubted you when you deserved my trust. And because of my choices, I missed 5 years of my children's lives." A tear rolled down his cheek. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not asking for another chance as your husband. I'm only asking that one day you believe I'm trying to become a better father." Emily looked at him for a long moment, then she quietly said, "I already believe that." Children often understand what adults complicate. Months later, during a family picnic, Lily sat between Emily and Ethan. She held both of their hands. "You know what I like?" Emily smiled. "What? You don't fight." Noah nodded. "My friends' parents always yell. You guys don't." Emily and Ethan exchanged a look. Lily continued, "We have 2 homes, but it still feels like one family." Neither adult spoke. Sometimes children say the wisest things without realizing it. Ethan made changes that surprised everyone. He stepped down as CEO and became executive chairman, allowing him to spend more time with his family. He created scholarships for nursing students in Emily's honor. He expanded the Blackwood Foundation to support single parents and children's hospitals across the country. When reporters asked why he had changed his priorities, Ethan smiled. "I spent years building a fortune. It took losing my family to understand what real wealth looks like." The quote spread across news outlets, but the people who mattered most weren't reading headlines. They were waiting for him at home with board games, homework, and bedtime stories. Another 5 years passed. Noah was now a confident teenager who dreamed of becoming an engineer. Lily had won a statewide art competition. Emily continued leading the children's clinic she loved. Ethan never missed another birthday, never missed another recital, never missed another soccer game. One evening, the four of them sat watching the sunset over the lake where Emily and Ethan had once shared their first date. Noah smiled. "You know?" "What?" "I'm glad things happened the way they did." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Really?" He nodded. "If they hadn't, Dad might never have learned how important family is." Ethan laughed softly. "You're probably right." Lily leaned against Emily's shoulder. "We're lucky." Emily looked at Ethan. "So are we." It wasn't the ending either of them had imagined years ago. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And sometimes, honest endings become the happiest ones. Sometimes, the greatest loss isn't money, success, or status. It's the precious moments you'll never get back. Trust is fragile. Once it's broken, rebuilding it takes time, honesty, and genuine effort. No career, fortune, or ambition is worth sacrificing the people who stand by you when life gets difficult. Real strength isn't found in never making mistakes. It's found in having the courage to admit them, learn from them, and become a better person. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it can open the door to healing and a brighter future. Remember, true wealth isn't measured by the size of your bank account or the title on your business card. It's measured by the love you give, the trust you earn, and the family and friends who are still beside you when the day is over. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. You never know whose life it might change.